Recording started.
Oh, okay. All right.
That was awesome.
Let's do that again. Booyah, and welcome to another episode of Truth Seekers. I'm JayDreamerZ. On this segment, I bring in other truth seekers onto my channel. This is a podcast I like to keep going, and I like to bring on fresh faces. Today's honored guest is Library of the Untold. Let me show you his YouTube channel. So I like to feature these channels that I watch. Okay, hold on. Let me see here. Bam. Is that it? That's it right there. All right. Hold on. 1 sec. Hold on. All right. So this is Library of the Untold's channel. Now I subscribe to him. Okay. See how it says subscribed right there? That's me.
Yeah.
Boom. So I'm subscribed. He's got over 130,000 subscribers. That's nice and everything, but the content is great. Okay. You can eat this content for breakfast as a cereal. Look, after the flood, this is the one that inspired me to ask him to jump on and talk about megaliths today. But then we've got Living Plasmoids compilation talking about plasma, philosophy, questioning what is sentience, the consciousness, ring makers, just going into the discussion about ring makers, Saturn, aliens, the plasma apocalypse. I highly recommend this one right here. You got to check that out. And let's say what's up. What's up to Joey? Good to see you, man.
What's up, dude? How you doing?
Good, yeah. So just before we were talking about Graham Hancock. You just showed me that new book.
Yeah.
You said he came unhinged.
He's usually playing it safe. You see him on Netflix or in interviews. He likes to play it safe. But if you dig a little bit deeper, there's some books by old Hancock where he goes off the rails about stuff that he believes. Particularly, this one is fascinating, and he wrote it with some other guys. He likes to feature other guys, and I like that about him too. The book is obviously very robust, but I haven't dug all the way into it yet. But the hypothesis put forward is along the lines of humans might be from Mars originally, which sounds like an absolutely bonkers thing to say. But when you look at everything and understand that truth is just so much stranger than fiction, it becomes plausible, you know?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I checked out his whole first Netflix one. I haven't finished the second one yet, but I like watching all that stuff. I don't care, if they have different ideas than I do or whatever. Right. It feeds me and it opens my mind, and I learned so much by just asking what are the implications to the videos that I'm watching and to the other people's research and what they're studying and just putting those puzzle pieces together. Right. Like I like to see us all as just having a few puzzle pieces, like picking up the breadcrumbs on our way home, and when we get together, we put together more of those pieces and we see more of the picture.
Yes. It's a beautiful thing, dude. Yeah. And one of my favorite things to do is to read and watch things that I do or previously disagreed with. It's very important. There's ideas out there that I would have never covered had I not put my own general biases aside. One of which you just mentioned was ring makers, that video of mine that, oh my God, just put the channel in a position where I feel like I'm no longer a one-hit wonder from the Saturn video. The video it did great, and I didn't expect it to, because the subject matter is so specific and so weird, that there's beings harvesting or planting plasma in the rings of Saturn that work as a hard drive for our reality is outrageous. Yeah. But the more I looked into it, the more I was like, okay, I got something here to report,
Yeah. That was I think that was your biggest video.
Wow. So far, except for the Saturn,
over 1 million, right?
Yeah.
Damn, that's pretty awesome. That's great. I like to do this stuff. For me, it's less about like knocking on each person's door, like on their little YouTube channel door. Hi, would you like to hear my good news about all the things that I believe in that you should too? And like trying to convert all the people to my beliefs or my perspective, or even convince anyone. I just like to share. I'm an
Right.
explorer. You remember on Fraggle Rock, there was that kid that wrote to his uncle, and his uncle's like, "Dear little guy, I was going under the underworld today, and I'm
Right.
in the hollow earth." And that's
Yeah.
me. I'm just like, dear everybody.
Right. People who attempt to spread their beliefs onto other people, it just sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
To have beliefs to stick to in the first place is exhausting on its own. But then to run around telling people to believe the same thing, man, I couldn't imagine that world. And yeah, but sharing is sharing is caring, right?
Yeah. Well, I want to point out I mean, you've got great content, man. And
Thank you.
I really like that you're truly and genuinely yourself. That stands out. Like
Thank you.
the whole way that you do your thing vibes with me because I do similarly, just in my own way, right?
Of course.
And you start off, you're doing this like narration in many of these videos, and you've got like this sweet like pictures to go along with everything, and your voice is even maybe dropped down a little lower, and you're like, next,
I was,
blah blah blah. This is what's happening. This is the craziest content idea, mind blowing, blah blah blah. And then you're showing like all the images and everything. And then later on, after the presentations, which are great, which I love the dad jokes too. Just I'm sure you get that a lot. It's freaking great.
Yeah.
After that, then you got like a whole post show presentation.
Right.
Sometimes you're even rocking out, which by the way, your band is pretty sweet.
Thank you. It's a one-man band, just as it is everything else. But the cinematic intros was a bit of an accident. On like the third video I ever made, that Saturn video I made, I recorded it, whatever, and all of the audio was there, but for whatever reason, the SD card or something, it cut off the first like 4 minutes of the video of me talking. So I had to fill in that first 4 minutes with pictures, and then I ended it with a logo. And then and after that, I was like, hey, that seems to work. So I kept doing it.
I love it. So check this out. I was watching one of his videos, and I had never seen him play music before, right? And he was dead serious. He was like, and so like, that's why the Anunnaki came to Earth. Hold on. Bust out a guitar, just out of. I was like, "Wow!" Okay,
I forgot. I think that was, what was it? It was the 21 Pilots, because the subject matter reminded me of the 21 Pilots lyric, which is extremely alchemical. 21 Pilots is, I feel, above and beyond when it comes to alchemical lyricism, but most people don't.
I'm so glad you said that, because like I know that there's millions of little 21 Pilots fans out there and they just love the music or whatever, but I love it for an entirely different reason. All their music videos and their backstories and lore and all the stuff that they're discussing is deep on deep levels, you know what I mean? And I would like to break it down on my channel, but I don't feel like all of my audience, no offense to anybody, but I don't feel like everyone's like knows who they are, because they're pretty young. They're kind of for younger. Most of my crowd that watches is probably 30 to 40 or something, somewhere in there. So more 90s. I have to
check out my demographics. I'm curious about that as well. But yeah, dude, the music video Jumpsuit by 21 Pilots is taken from the Red King, from Jung's Carl Jung's The Red Book. I mean, it's a chapter straight out of the book, and I think it's very beautifully put.
Well, speaking of chapters out of books, God, dude. Okay, when you have time, you should definitely check out my little breakdown on 21 Pilots that I did. I'll send you a link.
Oh, dude, I would love to. I insist.
I went super deep just on one video. It was like 3 hours long. It was, I didn't even cover everything. Let me do some screen sharing here real quick, if I can figure out how. Boom. Okay, cool. So here's your channel, and this is the video that I was checking out most recently. I've always been intrigued with so many different ideas and concepts and stuff about ancient history, right? I like to call a lot of this ancient oblivion. It's just been forgotten,
Yeah.
you know, covered up, forgotten, hidden, whatever it is. It's not known. It's not in our conscious minds. It's not at the forefront of anyone's mind. And as a matter of fact, it's pretty much fiction these days.
Right.
You know, which is probably where our fiction comes from, I think. But this one is called After the Flood on the actual, you know, thumbnail there. And then it says Wall of Water, Echoes of Sunken Godmen, Atlantis, Melted Stone, and World Flood Myths, and more.
Some people give me shit for having my titles are too long, but there's a lot to cover.
Yes, it is. But the main thing about this video, I'm just going to break it down simply. For most of the first half of the video, we're really looking at megaliths, but specifically ones that seem to have been shaped and molded, and very large ones. And that kind of takes us into temples and things. And then we start to look at, you know, you were discussing the importance and the usefulness. So let's check that out. I want to share some pictures here. I'm just going to put on a slideshow for us to check out.
Man, you are super prepared. This is awesome.
Oh, sweet. Thank you. Am I though? Let's find out if I could. It's so I get nervous trying to do things on the fly. All right, boom. Let's do that, and then share screen, and then for pow, and then bam. Yes. Okay, cool. All right, sweet. Well, these are just going to be some different ones here, but let me get it where I wanted it to begin. I got all kinds of crazy pictures here, and I want to touch on like all of them, especially the plane of jars one, dude. That was a good point too. I did a video on the plane of jars too.
I think they were alchemical. I think there was something alchemical about them. You can see the burnt where there were metal used to be liquid in them. Damn. Well,
yeah,
you can see the striations on that very clearly.
Yeah, hold on, let me zoom into that. Let's check this one out just for starters, right? Like you don't open up your academic history book in high school or whatever and see this. They're like, you know,
that was cut with a machine.
It's definitely didn't just grow. Like, you know what I mean? But this is interesting. Plus, one whole side's black like that. It's square. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna get distracted like a cat if I keep seeing all these pictures. Let me just stop the slideshow because I will definitely get distracted. Okay, sweet. So, I want to kind of just take some of these pictures to the ones that you were kind of sharing to begin with. So these are what we're really talking about. Just to start things off, just to get our foot into the door of these strange megaliths, right? People have seen this all over the place. Ancient Aliens made it very popular to point out that at various holy sites and historic sites around the world from antiquity, we've got stone that looks like this, right? I mean, I'll come back to why it's bulging out right there in a second, but let's take another look. Hold on, let me find these. I'll get to these bigger ones too in a second. We got these. See how they're like bulging out?
Right.
You were pointing this out in the video. And what was your you were talking about how the shapes may have been useful actually.
Well, there's two points to be made there. First thing is that cookie cutter style brick and mortar is subject to falling apart over time. The earth moves and the wind moves and everything moves, and so those things will shift out of place if not cracking completely, just like the upper layer of stone that we see on top of these. But these stones right here that seem to have been at one time melted, they are not cookie cutter in style. So they're older than all of the brick that surrounds them, and they look newer despite being older, because whenever the earth vibrates or shifts or anything happens, those shapes settle right back down into place where they once were.
Yeah, kind of locking in.
Right. So there's no cracks and there's no gaps. And it's because they're fitted together like a puzzle. Whenever they do separate, they gravity allows them to come back together. And in a very strange way, it almost looks like a language, like a double like a double meaning is there. Those nubs, those nipples that you see, some people say that they are meant to be able to carry the stone after they've been melted, but not all the stones have those nipples. If you think about language on computers, language on orally spoken or written down, any kind of language whatsoever, it's always got three components to it. It'll have the shape of the letters that are to be enunciated, spacing, and a form of punctuation. That's hype. The first thing I said about how they settle back into place after an earthquake is that's absolutely the case. What is only speculation, though, is that those walls might have some kind of language encoded into them that has been completely lost to us ever since.
Yeah, this is mind blowing. I mean, you know what they kind of remind me of? Like marshmallows. You know what I mean?
They
Like
look
if you
like
could just
marshmallows, right?
shape a marshmallow, because you can
Right.
see it's like pillowy.
Right.
You know, this is not chiseled. That's just
Right.
obvious. Like you
There's
don't
no,
need
yeah.
a
When they,
teacher to teach you that.
right. When they take a microscope and you can see where things have been chiseled or sanded or whatever. These things have. There's a phrase that I've been using lately. I didn't coin the phrase, but I heard someone say that historians are not engineers. And you can put that anywhere you want. Historians are not engineers any more than they are geologists. Historians are not. Their profession is about history that they've been told. So basically, we've got people sitting behind a desk who have been studying history in a college classroom, telling us how these things were built. Meanwhile, someone who is not a historian, like an engineer, will look at this and say what they've got to say and be told that they are incorrect by historians, because the historians have the lockdown on what happened throughout history, and all of the gaps that we can't seem to fill are just kind of left open. But when an engineer says that this was not chiseled and this rock seems to have once upon a time been liquid, the historians jump all over it, saying that that can't be. Well, I mean,
Right.
who are we listening to, you know? Well, and you
Well,
mix that with the fact that the mythology of it says that Viracocha or the daughter of the sun or whoever, whichever, pick your favorite, says that they could produce heat that was hot enough to melt stone. So the myth goes right with it.
yeah. I can't believe the mainstream academic story about this, because it's so dismissive of obvious things. You know what I
Right.
mean? Especially whenever I've gone personally to like national parks and stuff, and they always have like a visitor center where the
Right.
experts are supposed to be able to explain it all or whatever, but it's just clearly regurgitated, and people are
Right.
like very proud to know this information to begin with and share it with you, and here you go, this is the answer to that. But
Right.
then, like, whenever there's a line of questioning, you know,
Right.
honest questioning, then they start looking for like something to do. I think I have to sweep the floor. Sorry, I gotta where's the manager?
Well, it's strange when you see something that seems magical and your job is to give a plausible explanation for it. You know, it becomes difficult because some of these fruits demand an illogical explanation, and we don't have a choice.
Yeah, right. So I like the balance between these two extremes that I've seen, as far as people seeing things in ancient history and all, and fringe history and alternative and all that stuff. So for example, let me bring this back up. I'll put this back up here and just use this as an example. So people might look at that, and some academics might say, well, it's just it was just carved into place and over millions of years and wind and rain. I don't know what they would say, but
Right.
that's one person's perspective. But another person, they can see this and they can see people doing things. They can see a story to it and a history to it and a purpose behind it. And that's what I liked about your video, is you were really emphasizing the practicality of what we're seeing in these different shapes of these stones, and how they have practical use. And this isn't just walls in the ancient world. This applies to all of the ancient world as it's being rediscovered by individuals, across the world right now, like us,
Right.
who are re-examining these things, and instead of just taking them for granted, quite literally, and just being subservient to whatever narrative is given to us, we put ourselves in this situation. We ask how and
Right.
why.
Right.
Like that's what I said earlier. You said on your video, what was it again? Don't forget the what ifs.
Oh, don't forget your what ifs. Right.
Right. Yes.
Important. And because you'll become a fool if you say that something is this and it is this because of this definitively. I'll give you 10 years before you eat your own words, and and this is what happened to Billy Carson. He would have avoided his entire mess. I mean, he's trying to recover the best he can now, but it's uglier.
Yeah.
He just admitted that he was wrong.
Right.
But if in the first place he would have said that he had a hypothesis that he was working on, he would have never ended up in this mess in the first place. And
right.
It's very important.
Yeah, I stopped planting. I threw away my flag a long time ago. I used to run around planting my flag, and then I thought, well, I should go plant my flag in many different places. And then I just told myself, what do I need a flag for? It's all free country. Right. It's all available for me, including learning. Learning is a whole free country for all of us, to roam about freely, to go and learn these things and to check things out and learn for ourselves. Also, there's pitfalls along the way. Like, for example, I'm sharing pictures right now that could easily be AI. AI can make anything.
Oh my goodness.
We could be AI right now. You never know.
No way to know.
However, thankfully, we're old enough to have existed before all of this stuff became popular, and we can verify, having been researching for the past 20 plus years, that we have seen these things before and sometimes even visited them. So back to these rocks. Check this out. Like, you can see even these ones up here are pillowy and whatnot. And I like that you mentioned that it seems like these were, anticipating some sort of upheaval, whether it be, earthquakes or whatever. But if it is earthquakes, then that means, and we see the same structure and the same building and the same architecture and these ancient temples and walls and stuff across the world, then does that mean across the world they were, possibly experiencing a lot of shaking of the ground that's happening?
Right. And there's 2 points to be made about that. Number one is that if you see the Greek temple of Jupiter, it is falling apart and it's dissipating. It's crumbling. The stone is crumbling from ancient Rome. The temple of Jupiter is crumbling, but the stones that it's built on top of, which is thousands of years older than the temple of Jupiter, still looks brand new, minus maybe that's it right there, a little bit of weathering. So this is one of the right here. That's a trilithon, and that particular stone right behind her back weighs 1,300 tons. 13,
wow.
Not 13 tons, 1,300 tons.
And it goes all the way down.
Right. And they lifted that up, and on top of, and they also transported that from about 5 to 10 miles away. Whereas the temple of Jupiter, the Greek temple, was built on top of that thousands of years later, is falling apart. It's falling apart on top of this stone that is clearly still in good shape despite weathering. And the weathering itself tells us, and again, historians are not geologists either. Geologists show the erosion patterns on it to be over 12,000 years old, just like the pyramid and the Sphinx. And what else is strange about that is what you had said about they seem to have anticipated that the earth shifts and moves around, so they designed these things as to not be destructible.
Right.
When Solon visited Egypt to learn about Atlantis for the first time, the Egyptians were very proud to explain that they had record and memory of many different earth recycling cataclysms. some by fire, some by water. But
Right.
that account itself goes to show us that there were people before our ancients who, for whatever reason, understood that there's these like yuga cycles that the earth goes through, and they decided to build things that would be impervious to those cyclical changes, those cycles. Who those people were, though, no idea.
Okay, so hold on. Let me ask you a couple questions here.
Let's go.
Since you're my honored guest.
Okay.
So first, well, I'm gonna go in reverse order. So what do you think? What's your idea? What do you got as far as like this used to be taught? You know, you just said in ancient Egypt and stuff like this was known. This was in the libraries. This was taught. Everyone prepared. This was their way of life, working with the earth and its changes. What do you think happened? I mean, obviously we don't do that today.
Right. I think that can also be touched upon by Plato's account passed down by Solon. There's a section in there where he says that only the people left over from the flood were unlettered mountaineers, and they were happy to pass on the names of the gods as best they remember, but they did not remember the deeds of the gods. And the reason that they put forward that they couldn't remember, that we have amnesia, is because, and I don't want to misquote it, but he says that they were busy with the dealings of life and survival. So because they were in survival mode and not creative mode, they didn't have the time or the willingness to busy themselves with ancient wisdom. They had to eat, they had to take care of the babies. And in a way, I don't mean to conspiracize, it makes you wonder if that could be part of the reason that many of us are kept at such a low income. Because when you are I've talked to so many people about these things and the great mysteries in general, and the people who are the most disinterested in these fascinating subjects are the very ones who are just trying to get by,
struggling,
to my next
surviving. Right.
And it's anything, they don't want anything else going in.
Right.
Now, ironically, it's this ancient wisdom that will free you from that rat race in the first place. But if you never get around to realizing that, then I mean, there's nothing we can do, you know. But I don't know if it's a grand conspiracy to keep something hidden, or if it's us just doing it to ourselves.
Yeah,
both.
Could be, right? It's balanced to look at both sides of that. And plus, I talk about it all the time on my channel. I like to take accountability and you know, admit that I contributed to my own path that I'm walking, and I play some small role in my own ignorance, you know. But owning that helps me to, you know, rid myself of that by purposefully, you know, choosing my steps from now on instead of just following the path laid out before me. All right, let me put some of these more pictures. Oh, I got one more question for you before we do all that. Oh, I'm going to bust out this picture, and it goes along with it. So these gigantic stones, right? Obviously, like these, especially in the case of the dolmen, these are obviously erected, and, you know, it's a construction of some sort. There's different theories about it, but going back to like the trilithons and the megaliths and all these huge, heavy stone objects, you know, much of the debate is how did they move them? So what are your thoughts on how this was done?
Okay, so Randall Carlson recently, in his own very, very careful way, came forward saying that he is part of a project where they are utilizing plasma and sound vibration to lift weight. And it sounds like a stretch, because how could something as subtle as sound move something as enormous as stone? But if you think about what sound does, and you can join that with plasma technology, plasma is very much encased in electromagnetic energy. So the keyword there being magnetic. It seems as though Earth, being no pseudoscience here. Earth is a giant magnet. That's exactly
Right.
what it is.
Yeah.
And plasma surrounds all of us all the time. Dark matter, dark energy seems to be plasma that we just can't see because it's invisible. If you can reverse the magnetic structure of a gigantic stone as being the same polar, like north and north on a magnet repel each other, you can get the Earth to repel that stone. So it's not so much anti-gravity as much as it would be two magnets repelling each other. And then you have sound vibration that would make it able to be moved. Something that you could actually, once it's up and floating, you can get it to move. Now that sounds like it sounds, but this isn't just ancient. All right. So recently I picked up this puppy right here, Coral Castle. Everything you know is wrong. And I want to make a video called Edward, because no one knows where Edward came from. And he's a very mysterious figure. He spells his name differently everywhere he goes. Nobody knows who this dude is or what he built. Now, it wasn't, the stones weren't 1,300 tons, but there are stones that he moved by himself that were up to 10 tons for Coral Castle. Some of like right here, And he worked in the night, in the dark, by himself, and didn't really reveal any of his secrets. Now, what he did have was a tripod with a magnet hanging down on a chain. And at nighttime, people would sneak up on him to see him working. Didn't work because he would stop whenever he sensed somebody. I don't mean sensed, but no one busted him. But whenever they were sneaking up, they would hear whistling.
Yes.
And if you look at an ancient Sumerian stone carving of these three little guys, and then there's this like cymatic looking wheel, and then there's a big giant tall guy with like a bird head or whatever, and he's got like a pine cone. There, if you notice very carefully what they're all holding in their hand, like it's this Sumerian whistle that they have. And the whistle that they're blowing into seems to go into that wheel, that like cosmic wheel that they some call him the Anunnaki guy has in his possession. So between Randall Carlson's tinkering with technology, I haven't even mentioned Nikola Tesla or the Tibetan guys who can lift stones with trumpets, or Coral Castle where you hear whistling.
Right.
It almost seems as if this wild theory can be tied together by everything. Magnets, electricity, and sound are the three in conjunction with each other seem to move mountains, not figuratively.
Yeah. Also, I was thinking about the Hutchinson effect too. Have you seen those videos?
What is that? No.
Oh, you might be interested in that. So, so just basically, you'll have to check it out. But it's a whole series of these older videos, VHS style, of this guy that does these experiments where he makes things levitate. Like he and you can tell he's like fine tuning some kind of instrument, and there's some sort of like, I think, a metallic plate or something on this table, and he just puts objects on it, and like, all the objects just start floating up or whatever. It's pretty interesting.
Right.
But it's a lot older. It's probably footage from,
I'm glad it's older, because then it's not AI.
Yeah, I know, right?
Do you know the torture I go through, Jay, picking out illustrations for my videos?
Yeah.
Because some of them obviously are AI because it's artwork. I'm depicting an idea. But when I'm going through and like a temp, like, oh my God, my video Thoth of Agartha has a picture of Darren Kuyu, the underground city or whatever.
Yes.
There's several pictures of it in it. And that's what I'm talking about, right? But one of them, it turned out, was an AI picture.
Like one of these styles?
It was one of those, like it is top. Well, it was, like one of these on the top right, or the left here.
Okay.
Obviously, the artist's rendition is an artist's rendition.
Right.
But it was one of these real photos that ended up being an AI. I was like, why do you even have to make an AI version of it? We've got real photos of it. But I don't know.
I don't know either.
It didn't mislead the video, but it did remind me I got to be careful. And those handprints, dude. I mean, why? They're telling us with a straight face that was sculpted, chiseled. No.
Right.
Why? Like, no. Obviously, it also wasn't heat either, because they put their hand in it.
Right. Exactly.
So this is sound and magnetics. This is electromagnetic vibrations. I think whenever, you know how
looks like a big hand too.
Right. How you can like turn sand into quicksand, or if you take starch and you get it wet, you can punch it and your putty
or whatever.
Right. So, and if you vibrate sand from underneath, you can put like a beach ball on like a top of sand, but then when you vibrate it with sound underneath, the beach ball will sink into the sand. What's to say you can't do that with molecules?
Yes.
Stone, you know?
Right. So that's just basically, you know, there's a way to do anything, you know, you just have to figure out how. But if we can do anything, or we become, you know, we have the potential to do many, many things that are basically magic, like you were saying, you know, to those who don't know how to do it. When we start manipulating the building blocks of what things are made of, especially in regards to their bonds and what types of bonds they have. So if we look at this now, it's dense and it's hard, and it's got a different, clearly there's a more solid bonding that's happening with the material, right? But we're able to see into the past at a time, thanks to these handprints, where maybe the bonds were looser and it was more impressionable and malleable.
Well, on that, what I see here, and again, I'm going to give you one of these what ifs, and this is where I would go back to what we said about don't forget your what ifs.
Okay.
What I'm looking at here, if I had to put money on it, is not a technology or a device that was used. I think this particular person was the vibration themselves. Like their kundalini was so popping that they, I mean, we use the word magic or whatever, we use the word wizard, all this shit. If you look at what Wim Hof can do, control his own body temperature, they tell Wim Hof, they say, heat up your left hand by 4 degrees and make your right hand cold. And he'll do that at the same time because he has manual control of his immune system, of his heart rate, of his body temperature. I mean, that's one man, and he learned those things himself with no inspiration. Thousands of years of Tibetan monks, not Tibetan monks, just thousands of years of monks, of these people who are sitting and looking within, can maybe learn how to, because our body is vibration, electrical vibration.
Yeah.
What if they are quite literally the device, and in order to show that miracle, they put their hand through a stone as if it was water, like it's Play-Doh.
Right. Like earth bending in the like Avatar and all those types of stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. You see, anything becomes possible, especially I'd say. So I like to think about the atmospheric and terrestrial conditions possibly being much, much different than they are today.
Sure.
And one of the problems that I see quite often with modern research is that many people make the mistake of projecting the present conditions onto the past. And then therefore that's why, like, for example, academics does this all the time with the medieval times, and they go back and look at medieval pictures and bestiaries and drawings and paintings and they're like, wow, those, they were just playing in the mud and they weren't very advanced and they didn't know how to draw that great. Okay.
Right.
Or there's a reason why all the manuscripts across, 1,000-year period or whatever have strange and weird drawings and, almost always show the sky as being golden or yellow or orange or, whatever. And there's monsters and, I can't believe anymore. Like the more I research the past, the more I see that everything today is flip-flopped, and that gives me more credence to, theories of polarity shifts and the actual energy flipping, which would naturally correlate with the mind, and the spirit, and everything would actually physically, literally, metaphorically, in every way turn upside down, and everything would be done backwards, seen backwards, experienced backwards.
I'll give you a good one that is food for thought on that notion. I mean, so what if things were different 12,000 years ago because of the introduction of the moon? What if the introduction of the moon is what caused a locality of physics within our solar system to become solid? And what if that is quite literally the biblical fall that we're talking about?
Okay.
That sounds kind of crazy.
I don't know.
But so check this out. Back to Coral Castle real quick, and
Okay.
about where this guy came from. This might be the long road to get to my point, but it's worth it.
Let's take the long road.
So if you look at this is a zodiacal thing going on. Has to do with planets. So he's depicting Mars, Saturn, and the moon, and over here we have Venus, which begs the question, two questions. Why is Mars bigger than Saturn in this? And why is the moon the biggest? And then why is Venus seen as a crescent? Now, that's very fascinating, but this was an observatory. So the reason Mars is bigger than Saturn is because that's how big it looks compared to it from the Earth. And then if you understand that, that answers why Venus is seen as a crescent. Now take a moment and this is going to be, I think, a difficult one for a lot of people. There it is right there.
Hold on, I'm pulling it up.
All of the planets that he depicts outside of the solar system, outside of Earth, are seen as whole. But Mercury and Venus are seen as crescents. That's fascinating because I have a telescope here at home, and it's true. Whenever you look through a telescope to Mercury or Venus, they appear as crescents in the sky. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, you can't see Uranus anyway, but none of those appear as crescents. Venus and Mercury do, because they happen to be between us and the sun. Now, that is one of those things where it's like, oh, of course, it's almost too obvious, but that puts away so many of our strange conspiracies about the ancients once upon a time having a different view of celestial bodies than we do. For example, in a lot of people make the assumption that ancient people consider the earth to be the center of the universe because that's how they depicted it. That is how they depicted it because of our point of view. That's also how Ed depicted the planets as well, as seen from his point of view. But he paid attention to make sure that Venus and Mercury were seen as crescents, because with the sun behind them, you would see it as a crescent, just like the moon.
You're right.
This answers a plethora of misconceptions about zodiacal figures throughout history. Why Stonehenge, the pyramid, and the temples of Karnak and Machu Picchu are all aligned in such a way for equinoxes and solstices so accurately for a people who apparently had a misconception about this layout of the solar system.
Right.
It's when you think about it, it seems as if they knew these things, but were working them out in a way as to benefit them for a system of utility, just like we see those stones. Right. Understanding that the earth goes around the sun, whether it does or not, doesn't matter. If you have a knowledge of that, you can't apply it to your civilization unless it's based on from where you're at. In a way, we are the center of the universe because we are in here. And that's how they utilized it to become a technology in the first place.
Right.
So whether it's alchemical or it's spiritual or anything esoteric in general, we have to understand the meshing between the objective reality of what things are and the subjective reality of what they mean to us. because until you have both sandwiched together, you've got nothing to work with. This is why science is empty. It has no meaning. And this is why mythology is short-sighted, not short-sighted, but this is why mythology is loose, because it can be interpreted as anything. It takes both together for us to get anywhere, to answer any questions, or to create anything new. However, this does not get rid of the idea of a literal firmament either. Because this is where people, they want to split and they want to choose sides. Some people say the firmament was an allegory, and for what people saw, the zodiacs, whatever. And then there's some people who say it's literally a glass dome. And it's like, guys, okay, right. Both things, everybody wants to choose left or right. Everybody wants to choose one or the other. The firmament very well could be both subjective and objective, especially if you consider that, and you know about this more than anybody, that there once was a vapor canopy over the earth, a very dense liquid, like a thick cloud, that if you were to introduce the moon, and this is why I'm getting back to full circle here, right. If you were to introduce the moon 12,000 years ago, that vapor canopy would dissipate and fall to the earth, causing a great flood.
Flooding. So I think this is super interesting too, because so a part of my theory goes back to like studying the moon and trying to figure out my own cosmology instead of just everyone else's, and the moon keeps on coming up many different times. And then there's this concept of the moon cracking, the moon splitting, and sometimes the moon falling to earth and
right.
like hitting the earth or whatever, which is, obviously reflected in like moonfall, like in some of the movies that we have or whatever. But I think that's really interesting too. And I found like a Humpty Dumpty correlation and some really interesting theories when it comes to the moon. But
what is
have you ever heard
Dumpty thing? Is there a myth behind that?
Oh yeah. Oh, bro. Okay, so hold on.
Right.
I'll explain Humpty Dumpty. Here's my Humpty Dumpty theory. Okay,
I can't wait.
So Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and all the king's horses, all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. So I believe that this is history that's been preserved in a nursery rhyme that's taught to children, right. As many of them are. So for me, my cosmology locally is that there is a dome and that it's made out of ice. I like to think that the gases up there get cold enough that they just instantly freeze and become solids. Especially if the temperatures are as cold as, they say what space is, negative 400 something degrees. Right. That's cold enough to freeze any of the gases that we have here in our atmosphere. Right. Very close. Maybe not hydrogen, but that one's pretty close too. It's extremely cold. So let's just say that we did have a dome. We live under a snow globe type Earth or something, as far as the sky goes, very simply put, right? And that the glass is ice, right?
Okay.
And if now that for me creates a pressurized system, like it creates a closed system physically, right? Okay. So let's say that we had that, just speculating, right? And this would work in other models too. You know what I mean? You could make it happen with other shapes of the earth or whatever. But this is how I like to speak on it. So basically, there's this dome. Now, every once in a while, the firmament opens, as is recorded, throughout antiquity, that the sky opened up,
right,
from time to time or whatever. So let's say that it's like an eggshell and it physically breaks, and the sky is some sort of glass or ice or whatever. It's made out of stone. I don't care. But it breaks open, right?
Right.
If it does that and it creates a hole up there, like let's say it creates a perfectly circular hole at the apex of the firmament dome, then what that would do is whenever those gases refreeze after, hold on, let me back up a little bit. Okay, time out. So you got an ice dome basically, right? And it's holding in all the gases of the earth. It's creating pressure in pressurized systems and atmospheric pressure and everything. When that pressure is released, it explodes a hole out of the top of the dome, right? This would be at a neutral point of a polarity shift. All right. Short version is that ice refreezes after these events happen. And when it refreezes, the sky fixes itself basically. However, because there's now a hole up there, and because the shape that it freezes into is dependent upon the magnetic field, the magnetic field has now changed, and it must conform to this hole existing, which means that it would create sort of an inverted dome that faces Earth.
Mhm.
Right at the top of the regular bowl-shaped upside-down bowl dome or whatever, right?
Right.
So this would be a hump that is up in there in the sky. This would be actually Humpty Dumpty.
Right.
And then every other cycle, this portion of the sky would break, and then it fall down to the earth, and that would create shattered pieces of fresh water that are frozen, which would be icebergs and stuff like that, all the way around the Arctic Circle. And this is Humpty Dumpty shattering or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And it's just a story to me of an apocalyptic event, basically. And and it has to do with the king's horses and the king's men. And this is an allusion to nobility. And for me, nobility comes about from surviving the apocalypse, basically. And whoever wins, whoever survives the apocalypse, that's the great game or whatever. And those families that survive, they reinstitute and rebuild and reshape the world however they see fit.
It's a perfect parable that no matter how powerful you are on Earth, you're nothing compared to celestial changes, And what you're saying is absolutely perfect, because Humpty Dumpty didn't come from nothing, even though we say that we've lost its meaning ever since. But like the Greek myth of Helios yoking his father's chariot, and then he tried to go around the full track, the entire track, but his chariot burnt up, and then it ended up burning the earth. Well, that's a Greek legend. But the priests of Egypt heard this myth, and they told Solon straight up. They were like, yeah, that's a story, but you're not getting it. There's no moral to that story. And there was a particular Egyptian priest king who was very frank about it. He was like, all of that myth is due to the heavens churning so much that the friction affects the earth. So in school, we're told that Egyptians were superstitious with religious fervor. And meanwhile, the oldest account we have of Egyptians talking is literally them saying, dude, these mythologies and your superstitions are based in an older science that they happen to have a record of, not anymore, but did have a record of.
Right.
So every myth that we have, and this is no surprise, stems from an original happening. The story of Noah's Ark, it was not created out of nowhere. There was a great flood. And then eventually down the line, someone was like, okay, what can we learn from this? Where they incorporated the ark, meaning the head, and then that the meditation causes you to float up. Water represents emotions and chaos in the world, and it lifts you up. Meditation lifts you up within the ark, but you're not supposed to forget your animal nature. Your animal nature is meant to be kept and single file and and not gotten rid of, like drowned in the flood, but to be taken with you. So allegory will always stem from a literal happening, and Humpty Dumpty would be absolutely no different,
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's like, people internalize anything. You can internalize and as well it should be, because I mean, me personally, I think everything's connected, and there's like the whole as above, so below thing. And there's a fractal nature to things and a holographic nature to things. So the large is seen in the small, and the small is seen in the large. So yes, anything can be internalized.
Right.
You know what I mean? But there's a balance to be had between the internalization of it and the metaphor behind it or whatever, and the moral, and the actual historic event and the physical reality behind it or whatever. And so I like to balance between the two. I like to acknowledge people are like, the kingdom of heaven is within you or whatever, and that's your insides, and believe. And I'm like, yes, all of that is good, but also let's talk about the physical, actual kingdom of heaven and a terrestrial paradise on earth, and physical, actual, real historic events that happened and took place. Not that it's me. Like 21 Pilots, they do this all the time. Okay, all the fans are like, no, see, Nico is like, he's struggling with depression, and he's just trying to share that with the world. And I'm like, Yeah, okay. I mean, I get that, but there's a story happening. There's something
Right.
there's
Yeah.
something more being shared.
For there to be heaven within indicates that there is a heaven without, and those two things are connected. That's why we've got heaven
Yeah.
because it's a fractal of something else that I guess has yet to be identified. I don't know.
Well, let's do this. I want to kind of like go over a few of these pictures with
Oh,
you
yeah.
and get some of your thoughts on, things that you notice or things that are interesting to you about these types of. So I wanted to go beyond just like the actual purpose, like bricks, even
Right.
Legos that are in different shapes. But look at some of this, like
Yeah.
some of these formations where people lived in these.
Right. They lived like insects live in an ant farm. And I mean, you can't destroy that house right there. That's the
Yeah.
safest place you can be. It doesn't matter if there's a solar flare, if there's meteors, a storm, wind, rain. That right there is you're safe. You're good to go. And I can't imagine what these things, because obviously they look rough right now because of erosion and weathering and age. These things were smooth once upon a time, and I bet you they almost looked high tech, almost alien,
Right.
you know.
You
And
know what?
I love this one because this could be closed from the inside, but not
Yes.
from the outside.
There it is, a side view.
Right,
No, this is super interesting to me. These wheel doors.
right.
Like
There was
there's
no
no
hole on the other side, so
there's
you
no
couldn't grab
lock.
onto nothing.
If another human was on the other side, they could stick their little, tree branch in there and just
Right,
open it up, right?
right. Yeah,
So here's what I wonder. Okay, so let me I have a theory that, monsters are real and there were more of them the further back in time we go, and there was strange creatures that came up out of the earth and
mm-hmm.
chimera and all of that, cryptids and things of that nature. Um if things like this and possibly like the Great Wall of China and maybe some other, megalithic wall structures and things, I mean, this clearly wasn't meant to keep out a human. If this is the main, it just has a hole in the middle and it's just meant to just
Right,
push it out of the way. But if there's like gigantism,
right,
in the old world, and you got like some creepy crawly gigantic bug looking, otherworldly monster things that don't
right.
quite have like arms and they could just open it or whatever, but they're more bug like or whatever, then you're keeping them out,
Yes.
and
Yeah, a lot of people say that these underground cities were people who were hiding from the cataclysms of weather that were happening. You wouldn't need a door like that.
right.
They were hiding from, and I like to think giants. And as wild as that sounds, well, first of all, giants are in every single mythology, religious text, and everything forever. So
Right. Yeah.
we talked about them as if they were literal.
Yeah.
And two, these openings where they would get in were too small for giants.
Right.
And the
Yes.
doors to get to those openings in the first place, they had these doors where once you're on the inside, you could take a stick and roll that stone in front of the door and it would be closed. Whereas there's no hole on the other side for anyone to grab onto to be able to roll it back out of place.
Yeah.
That was,
See,
it was meant to hide from someone.
I like that. I like that. So we can look at something that's here now and like almost just like see into the past using our imagination and balancing that out with some reasoning and some logic,
Right.
and sort of see things at work. So like, for example, these dolmen that I showed earlier, right? I love these things. So these are all across the world by the hundreds of thousands of these, all everywhere, all over the place. And the mainstream explanation is that, oh, they're like markers for graves or whatever the dumb explanation is. They even said that these jars, that these are, oh yeah, these are cremation, like special burial
Right.
places or whatever. Like, no,
Right.
man, this is a house.
Right.
This is a house.
This
is
one
protection
right
from the
here,
elements.
and this one and one of the other ones before it are actually vitrified on top. So the top is glass.
Oh my, okay. Well,
Yeah, I don't know about that one, but this
right.
one, if you read
This one right here?
Yep. Robert Schoch, and the most vitrified forts you'll find are on Easter Island, but they're all over the place.
Okay.
And, this one and an abundant amount of other ones, not all of them, but a good amount of them are vitrified on the top to the point that they are glass.
Oh, you know what? I've got a theory about that. Let me show you this.
Please.
So for those who are watching right now, vitrified basically means like turned into glass.
Right.
That the rock has become smooth. And this happens with fulgurites whenever lightning hits the beach sand or whatever, and
Right.
it will actually turn the inside. So a fulgurite looks like it's frozen lightning made out of sand or dirt or something on the outside, but on the inside of a fulgurite, it's hollow and it's actually glass all throughout the inside of the fulgurite. And I have a theory about that whole vitrification and the top part being more dense than the rest of it. But I want to actually pull up this picture if I have one. I think I have one here. Yeah. So this is a good example. So you see rocks like this all the time. Yeah. Sometimes they kind of look like mushrooms and stuff. I liked, and you can see there's a door right there. Somebody lived. This is literally a Smurf house. This is a petrified freaking Smurf house, man.
Yeah.
And there's lots of these all over the world. There's just one. But anyways, let's focus on this one, right? So check this out. You can see just by looking at it, using the imagination, it looks kind of muddy right there in the middle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right? We got another part down here where the earth almost kind of like grows up out. It looks kind of muddy in the middle, but the top clearly is not muddy. It's baked.
Right.
The top is burnt.
Yeah.
And it's way more dense and vitrified in some cases than the rest of it. So one could make the case that these cosmic bolts of lightning and plasma that reach down from the heavens with such immense power that have the ability to rearrange bonds at the electrical and chemical levels, possibly pull up muddy portions of the earth in places where they're about to strike, and then they hit and make a connection up here at the top, and then they send that power all throughout it, and then obviously it would become less powerful and less powerful as it goes throughout the clay and mud and muck and whatever. That one's cool that it actually has a door right there.
Yeah.
And then you got ones that look like this.
Wow.
These blobs. There's many of these different examples, and they're just balanced quite often.
Yeah.
And academics would say, oh, this is wind and rain over millions of years.
Right.
Perfectly chiseled this little weird bubble
That's the same
tree.
thing they said about the damn Grand Canyon until, dude, we've been told about the Grand Canyon that it's from water erosion, dude.
Yeah.
Do you know there's no entrance or exit in the Grand Canyon?
No.
For it to be water erosion, you would have to have a gulf, mouth, something where a river flowed into it,
right?
Or it flows into an ocean, or something like that. There's no entrance or exit in the Grand Canyon, dude. That shit was either an ancient mine for a quarry,
right,
or it was gouged out of the earth by a gigantic plasma lightning that we can't even imagine. It looks like and they said like in Mars, there's a bunch of rivers on Mars where the water flowed uphill. You look closer, it looks like the Grand Canyon. And it looks like, and Mars is the planet that is meant to it's a personification of war. So it's like there's gigantic canyons chunked out of the surface of Mars. Like they look like a lightning bolt. And just like the Grand Canyon looks like a lightning bolt. I don't think there's a coincidence there. I think there was a discharge of plasmatic lightning between the two planets once upon a time. Whether or not that was a result from our man-made war, or if it's like the what's it, electric universe theory, where it naturally happens, the static between planets. I don't know, but it wasn't from water. And man, the sooner we can get past it being from water, the sooner we can explore new ideas. But we have to get past that first misconception first, which is easier said than done.
Man, when I visited the Grand Canyon, I've only been once, but when I went, it's nothing at all than anything on TV or like pictures or anything. Yeah. Nothing. Like the first thought, I immediately was like, I'm recording a video right now to just I got to capture this. This was not made by water.
Right.
Like, I'm just telling you, I now know. Okay, I'm boots on the ground. I'm here live in person. This stuff is not eroded by any kind of river, water, nothing at all. You know what I mean?
If water could do that, there wouldn't even be a Sphinx. There wouldn't even be pyramids. Like This shit wasn't from water. But, you know, whenever these people are paid to come up with some kind of solution to it, they reach for the nearest thing, and then the rest of us seem to run with it for dozens and dozens of years down the road until somebody throws it all out the window. But unfortunately, the human condition, we have to have an entire new hypothesis put into place before somebody will undo a previous theory, because no one likes there to be a vacuum. I don't know why that is, but
I don't know. It's ego, maybe.
yeah.
But check this out. Look at this is all the different ways that the Earth has just bent. Like you were saying, you could tell at some point, and one of your videos, that video I pointed out, you said you could tell at some point it seemed like it was liquid.
Right.
Like it was a liquid form. And then, I mean, like this looks like, I mean, look at it's moving. Like,
yeah, that's
I see
wild.
movement here in this frozen statue of Earth.
And that's vertical movement too. That is crazy. I have no idea. Like what that almost looks like. It looks like wood grain.
It does, right? Yeah, it's kind of like how the wood moves or grows or something. This is just a cliff. This is just a wall.
Right.
Look at all this crazy stuff. How the Earth moves and bends and stuff. And then you got like these just gigantic spherical. You know what I mean? Like, where do these come from? If the Earth is just growing, or you know, whatever, however it came about, where do these gigantic spherical things come from? Check this out. I think that these boulders are created, for the most part, in the sky.
How so?
Like, okay, so remember I was talking about the Earth's atmosphere depressurizing?
Yeah.
If that were to happen and the pressure was suddenly released, then Archimedes' principle would kick in, and there would be an increase in buoyancy, so things would float and we'd have zero gravity for a short time until it reached equilibrium again. And the waters would be the first things to just start floating up. Waves would just rise and rise. But if you have that mixed with, you know, all these different waters, the vapor, all this stuff mixed with all the sand and dust and dirt and whatever that's also flying around the atmosphere, and then all of a sudden you have these dragons of highly charged electrical ionized hydrogen coming in from the plasmasphere, striking all of these, you know, blobs of mud and whatever that's floating up into the atmosphere. And then they petrify, and it zaps all the water out of it, and it solidifies it. And then they just, you know, some of them come back down in these smooth patterns or whatever. This looks like a freaking submarine or something out in the desert.
Dude, that is crazy. Sometimes those plateaus that you see that are surrounded by nothing but flat, like desert or whatever. Have you seen oh boy, Sagaria? Have you seen the little city of Sagaria up on let me see if I can't spell this, since you got like the computer hooked up.
Sagaria?
Yeah, I forgot exactly. Yeah, so Sigiria, Sagaria.
Got it. Oh wow, check that out.
Sigiria.
Oh, hold on. Let me put this on the screen.
Yeah. So this thing is up in the air, and there is just there's no plausible explanation. First of all, it's got a self-cleaning and self-regulating pool on top of it that is filled with water, that is filled with clean water.
Oh, yeah.
There's no reason
I see that
for an underground aquifer to be able to replenish something that high in the air. It doesn't make any sense. And it looks like it was just built on top of this plateau or whatever, but closer inspection will show that there are megalithic stones where it looks like structures. It's not just carved out of the bedrock. Some of these stones were brought up here. So there's megalithic stones up on top of this plateau that were fitted and put into place to make these buildings. So moving a 5 to 50 whatever ton stone vertically is a mystery. These people got it up onto, this isn't even a mountain. It doesn't slope gradually up.
No.
Of course, the mainstream hypothesis is that they built a ramp. But what a ramp would mean an entire pyramid up against this thing.
Right.
And then you've got that water system right there, which just throws a wrench into everything. No one can figure it out. No one's also putting forth the funding for there to be an excavation to figure out how that thing keeps supplied with water, because it's not rainwater. And
yeah,
it's almost like the Osirion in Egypt.
Right. That's water, what I was thinking.
Right. It's clean water. They tested it. It's not coming from the Nile. And when I found out that the water in Egypt was not coming from the Nile, I about lost my damn mind, dude. It's just, at that point, you can hypothesize all you want, but that shit don't make any sense.
So recap that part for my audience who might not have seen your video yet, which I highly recommend, about that the water that was coming up at Osirion.
Right. So the Osirion has clean water in Egypt to this day. There's no hieroglyphs, and the erosion, and there's a couple other things that show that it wasn't built during dynastic Egypt. It was built before the Egyptians. So the Egyptians found, I think a lot of people know by now, the Egyptians found the pyramids. They did not build the pyramids. The Osirion is no different. It's made out of the same stone. It's made out of hard granite, whereas the Egyptians used like sandstone. So the Egyptians don't know how it was built or who built it either. But it's a pool. And the water is clean. It's green right now because of algae, whatever. But it's coming up from an aquifer. So to figure out how it works, you got to pump the water out. They started pumping out the water 500 gallons a minute, and the water level never moved. They have no idea where the water is coming from because they can't get down there. And they can't scuba dive in there either because the openings are too small. It's deep. They used like sonar, and they couldn't figure out how deep this thing was. There's aquifers beneath the pyramids too that might have been used to power them for whatever reason that they used that for. But the Osirion cannot be pumped dry, and the water level stays consistent where it's at right now in that picture, and has been for as long as we've ever known.
Wow, that's crazy. You know what that also kind of reminds me of is that Oak Island treasure, and like how like the water just kept filling up. Yeah. See, dude, this is like ancient knowledge that people clearly understood how the earth worked a bit better than we do today. And they were able to work with it and shape shift it and change it and and anticipate the way like future earth changes and stuff. This is super interesting. I'm gonna go ahead and take us to the end of today's presentation, but we're gonna have to definitely get back together again and talk about some more stuff too, because this is the tip of the iceberg. Like I just chose rocks. You know, we could talk about rocks. Like we could have a whole channel just talking about strange geology and weird rocks and anomalies in earth and stuff. This is what I love about, like, this allows us to be childlike once again. With wide eyes. Like, you know, when you're in a big city and you're a tiny little kid and everything's just a miracle.
It's imagination. When it comes to rocks, and man, where do rocks even come from in the first place? I mean, that could be an existential question on its own. But people talk about, why can't you carbon date rock? Well, it's like the first thing that was ever. So, you know.
Yeah. Well, I want to wrap things up by asking you one final question that I typed into my phone. I wanted to ask you before. For you personally, you know, like I've seen many of the videos that you've put out. You touch on a lot of different things. A polymath, I think that's called, or a Renaissance man, you know, like people who are into and study many different subject matter and things, and also with a focus of finding a relationship between them. You know, like that's what I like about your content too. Especially you even get into the metaphysical side of things and the spiritual side of things, and you know, like really balancing out the fact with fiction and and supposition and, just reckoning in general. The hell was I going with that? Hold on. Let me organize my thoughts.
You have something on your phone.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, thank you. So I had a note on my phone. I wanted to ask you, all these topics, all of them: Saturn's rings, the ancient gods, gigantism, fact found within fiction, science fiction, basically equating to prophecy, and just so many of the interesting, strange, weird, anomalous things that really break me out of the mundane, bland boringness of this retarded upside down world that we live in right now. I love it. I cling to it.
Yeah.
And that's me. But I also see that you're very much, I vibe with your energy too. And I recognize that in you. My question is, what are the implications of all of it for you? What is it, what dominoes does it touch, and what are the implications for you personally?
I think that it is a form of disclosure on a personal level that anybody can have. And that personal form of disclosure is what breaks you out of your shell of narrow vision in the first place. And that is what kind of makes it the opposite of what a lot of people assume. Because I don't cover just paranormal, ancient science, but it's everything untold, everything that's not taught in school in that narrow bandwidth, and everything esoteric, I guess you could say, which some people would, upon first glance, assume that it is a hobby or an interest or something along those lines, or a career, when in reality, what it actually is literally everything else outside of what we've been taught. Drive to work, have kids, retire, die. That schooling notion that we've been kind of harnessed into, that I call like the black cube, that people they bother with their whole life. That's narrow. That's the small aspect of reality that everybody thinks is the full reality. But once you have a personal disclosure that lets you know that, okay, maybe I don't have the answers of how they got those stones up there, or how the water in the Osirion is clean, or blah blah blah, or how plasma is alive. Even though you don't have an answer as to why or how, you now understand that there is a big open-ended question that nobody can answer, that leads the human psyche personally within to either have an existential crisis or to be able
Yes.
to celebrate the fact that none of this matters. None of this going to work, 401k, credit score, insurance thing fucking matters at all, because it's a grain of sand that's been built for us that will break down just as easily as it went up. And the moment you get past that is the moment that you can be free from all of it, but it doesn't come without suffering. And this is where alchemy comes in, because alchemy is under the same umbrella as everything else esoteric. And when it comes to the alchemical transmutation of the self, it's a matter of how much pressure, heat, and chaos you can withstand and survive, and to be able to come out as a purer form of what you were before, unpolluted by the excess materials. As you know, in alchemy, metaphorically speaking, lead is burned with sulfur and then can turn into gold. This is the same. It's the same aspect as, instead of going through your life from A to B, doing as you've been told, which is non-alchemical, to be able to go through the pain and suffering of wonderment that comes with losing friends, losing relationships, to walk your own path is going to do both of those things easily. and you're going to find yourself alone and isolated, which is also part of the sulfur. Once you can survive those things, which comes from the existential crisis that comes with the esoteric, you find yourself in a better mental position within. And then as soon as that clicks within, as above, so below, so within, so without, all that, whatever, it reflects out from you and into the world. All of a sudden, before you know it, you are the type of character that leaves the room better than it was when you first came in any way, shape, or form. That whether it be tidiness or vibes or whatever it is in the air that makes things bad or good, depending. It's you become not a reflection of your environment, but instead you become something that reflects out onto the environment, and thus the environment is changed because of your presence. You can project reality, and it's quite literally that simple. It's simple, but it's difficult. You have to burn an alchemical fire before that happens. The self that is the persona, the ego, the thing that you think you are, has to die. And then what resurrects in its place is an actual self with a capital S. And that self is, as crazy as it sounds, just like the mythology says, is a wizard. It can change reality around you. And that changing of reality might be as simple as a scientific correspondence of cause and effect. Or it could be something of a superposition, like quantum entanglement, where things are actually changing around you. And it might be both, which is where I tend to side that it is both, because there's an interaction, like a feedback loop between us and reality. But that part doesn't matter. The part that matters is that once you have that personal disclosure and you witness it as being real, you can trust it. And if you can trust it, well, then damn, you finally get a chance to relax. So despite everything being as overwhelming as it is, once you find yourself actually able to relax within that chaos, you're completely free. And there's nothing else that can ever bother you ever again, not even death. It's a good place to be.
We definitely need to blow up the chat with some emojis as a form of applause. If you don't mind, if you're over on my channel right now, please, this is a taste of what you get if you go over to Library of the Untold. It's a beautiful sermon. It's a beautiful presentation and great thoughts, and I love it. I love it so much. Hey, have you ever read that book, The Alchemist?
I did, yeah. I got it over somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of as you were describing that. That's you saved the best for last. Well done.
That's what I do with my videos too.
Yes, you sure do.
Letting you know, if anybody watches the first half of the video and they say, come back to it later. I know the last one, Wall of Water, is an hour 20 minutes long, and I know, but the end is where all the goodies are at. Yeah,
it's gonna be some good stuff to check out. Please go over and show Joey P some love over at Library of the Untold. Thanks a lot for being my guest. We're gonna wrap things up, and then you're free to go after I start rolling the credits or whatever. I'll just give you a text personally and say thanks and stuff, because I'm gonna go do a bunch of chores and do my thing here as well, and let you get to your family. We're gonna get together again and discuss some things again. I'd love to. You're totally invited.
Anytime, bro.
Okay, cool. Everybody blow it up in the chat. Thank you so much. Library of the Untold. Go check out his channel. All of his links are in the description. So if you want to donate or check out his work, his book or anything, it's all in the description. And until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.
Thanks, man. See ya.
Maybe. Hold on.
Well, I might as well. Let me get a copy of this.
Okay. Yes. All right. Let me see. It's blooper time. Hold on 1 second. I gotta roll the credits. All right. Let's do it again. Let's do this one. Bye.